There are some people in the center that might say, you know what, government doesn't do all that well, government doesn't do all that much, all that well. And this idea of massive programs run by the federal government is concerning.
You know, it's funny that Republicans like to bring this up as boilerplate platitudes, but when you actually look at the provisions in this bill, 2/3 of all Americans support it, and that includes net 78% of Republicans and net 25% of independents, so those very people that you were talking about. So, you know, it's easy to just cast all this off as socialism and communism and big government spending, but we are actually talking about specific provisions that people want, that are popular. Expanding Medicaid to cover important provisions like vision, dental, and hearing, universal pre-K, everything that I named before, they are all popular provisions. When we actually get into the nuts and bolts of it,
Brian, if this is so popular, then why is Joe Biden's approval rating in the 30s, according to even left-wing polls? He's losing on every single issue, including on COVID, which, by the way, was the only issue that he was in the positive on. If his agenda is so popular, then how come that's not reflected in his poll numbers?
Michael, could a reason that his approval ratings are low right now is because he hasn't passed the agenda yet? And if he actually was able to pass the agenda, the numbers might go up higher.
Joe Biden has been campaigning on this from day one, and furthermore, he is the executive of the country right now. So while he hasn't passed this $3.5 trillion, really more like $5.5 trillion law, he is executing on his agenda right now, on the border, on the economy. Just today, he was bragging about how many people are losing their jobs and there are mass firings, but that's actually good because of public health or something like that. And so I think people are seeing what the agenda is. I don't think what he's passing in this law is radically different from the way he's governing, and it's simply not popular.
Brian, last word to you.
Here's the thing. I think the difference between at least what I do and what the right-wing media ecosystem does is I treat my audience like they're intelligent, because I know that it's not just a matter of Joe Biden trying to pass these things, but him deciding, oh, I'm not going to, that we have a 50-50 majority in the Senate with a filibuster that requires a 60-vote threshold to pass any legislation. So let's not pretend that Joe Biden is choosing willfully
Brian,
not to pass it.
I know your audience is very intelligent, so I hope they've heard of budget reconciliation. You are aware that the Democrats can get through their agenda with 50 votes plus one. In many cases,
and they're negotiating,
and they're just choosing not to do that because they want Republicans to own some of their agenda.
And they're negotiating that right now, and something will pass. And by the way, just one more fact, you know, you've called this a $3.5 trillion package. It's funny how
I called it a
for Republican priorities,
package.
It's funny for Republican priorities, everything is in one-year increments, but for Democratic priorities, everything is the number over 10 years. The fact is, this is a $350 billion package over the course of 1 year. That is half the cost of our annual military budget. And no one asks how we pay for it when we pump $700 billion into the military for contractors and God knows what so that we can enjoy perpetual wars. But God forbid a senior right here at home gets a hearing aid.
Brian, Donald Trump, the last Republican president, ran on bringing the troops home, and he did draw down the troops all over there. In fact, the last president to push for these perpetual wars in all of these countries was the Democrat Barack Obama. And furthermore, in this budget, one of the stranger items in there is a provision called tree equity, and it's a program to spend a lot of money planting trees in poor neighborhoods. I actually have no problem with it. I think that of all the terrible programs here, tree equity is perfectly fine. I like beautiful neighborhoods. But if you're really comparing the urgency of tree equity versus the national security of the United States, I think the priorities might be a little bit jumbled.